Good evening. The government had long insisted the plan to delay some local elections in May was to spare town halls having to run polls while undergoing big reorganisations. But opposition parties accused Labour of running scared. And today, the government unexpectedly backed down, meaning the elections in Essex and Hertfordshire will go ahead. A legal challenge from Reform UK was due to be heard at the High Court this week, but the government abandoned its plans, saying it had received new legal advice. Nigel Farage, visiting Romford this afternoon, was jubilant. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Basildon in Essex, where voters were due to go to the polls. Then they weren't, and now they are again. May the 7th on-off council elections are back on after a government U-turn. For Reform UK's Nigel Farage, especially, this is a victory. He was taking the government to court.
We were due there this Thursday. They've caved, they've collapsed. It's a victory for reform, but more importantly, it's a victory for democracy in this country. We are delighted.
The decision to postpone the elections was confirmed less than a month ago when the Prime Minister told ITV News it was what the councils themselves wanted.
The government's not taking the decision here. We've said to each council, what do you want to do? Do you want to go ahead or do you want to delay? So this is locally led.
In the home counties, that meant voters in Basildon, along with Harlow and Thurrock in Essex, and Stevenage and Welwyn Hatfield in Hertfordshire would all lose out. The argument for cancelling polling day was that the councils are due to be abolished as part of a local government reorganisation, so elections would be a waste of money.
Given how frequently the government U-turns, I don't think we can be entirely sure that that local government organisation is going to go ahead anyway. I mean, it sets a very, very dangerous precedent if a government can just cancel elections for swathes of the country under the basis that there may possibly be this reorganisation.
The planned reorganisation is set to be the biggest shake-up of local councils in more than half a century. In Surrey, for example, 12 authorities, including the County Council, will be scrapped and replaced by just 2. Tonight, the government said its decision to reinstate the postponed elections followed advice from lawyers.
Well, Simon, the opposition parties are going to be all over this reversal, aren't they?
Yes, yet another U-turn in a growing list from the government, so you can expect the opposition parties to try to maximise Sir Keir Starmer's discomfort. Not quite so easy for the Conservatives, though, because some of the councils that wanted a postponement were in fact Conservative. Harlow, for example. Now, the suspicion among some voters, of course, is that both Labour and Conservative politicians didn't want the election to go ahead simply because they feared that they are going to be defeated by Reform UK. And certainly it's Nigel Farage who's celebrating tonight, not just getting the government to reverse that postponement, cancellation of the elections, but also persuading the government to pay his legal fees. And tonight we've heard from the leader of Thurrock Council, a Labour leader. She said she was disappointed at the change so late in the day, and putting the elections on is going to be a challenge.
OK, Simon, thanks very much indeed for that.
Good evening. Tonight we're looking at what's long been seen as a scourge on London, the rate of crime, which appears to be giving the capital a bad reputation across the world. While the city's police force bolsters resources to deal with gangs snatching phones, a campaign group says those stealing bikes are all but ignored. In our first report tonight, we're with the Met Police on a dawn raid as they discover children as young as 14 are being recruited to steal mobiles in so-called Fagin gangs. There's been hundreds of arrests in the past month, but a phone is still stolen in the capital every 7 minutes. Here's our correspondent, Simon Harris.
An early morning police raid in Hackney. The Met is on the trail of a gang of phone thieves.
5:06 in the morning, you're currently under arrest.
A 16-year-old boy is arrested. It's thought the gangs recruit young phone snatchers through social media.
The thieves are getting anything between sort of £200 and £600 for a phone they steal off someone in the street, a sort of an Apple or a Samsung device. And then those have been sold for a lot more internationally. So this is a global trade.
In the past 4 weeks, the Met's new focus on phone theft saw around 250 suspects being detained.
Within this operation alone, we have seized and recovered over 1,000 phones and then hundreds of laptops and other high-value property.
Georgia knows the hassle of losing a phone. A pickpocket stole hers from a zipped coat pocket on the tube.
The next day, I didn't have a phone, so I had to go on the tube without a phone. Couldn't book a desk for work because I didn't have the app. I couldn't use two-factor authentication for any of my work things because I didn't have my phone. I couldn't get into my building at work at first because it had my identification on it.
In 2024, more than 81,000 mobile phones were reported stolen in London. Last year, that dropped to 71,000, a 12% fall. Scotland Yard points to new tactics. They include drones launched from police station roofs to follow suspects. High-performance electric dirt bikes are another new weapon in the police armoury. And facial recognition cameras are increasingly being used to look for known offenders. But it comes at a price. Londoners are being asked to help pay for the crackdown on phone theft through higher council taxes. The average Band D bill will include an extra £15 to pay for the new equipment, as well as a dedicated new team in the West End. The Mayor hopes it will make the capital a no-go area for thieves and robbers.
For year after year, he's denied the problem, blamed the phone companies and refused to get a grip. Finally, eventually, if he does get a grip, we'll see some improvement, but I think we need to be aware this is so far very small improvement from a very high level.
Mobile phones have become an essential tool for day-to-day living, so phone theft has become a major concern for Londoners. The Met says it gets that and is on the case. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Simon, the Met seem desperate to get theft under control, but will it help London's image as this crime hotspot?
Talk to any taxi driver and they'll tell you that phone snatching is the #1 concern among foreign tourists, and that's a reputation that no city wants. Add to that, we're being encouraged to cycle more, so bike theft is having more of an impact on Londoners. And then there's shopkeeping. All of it gives succour to those who argue that London is lawless. Now, Sadiq Khan and the Commissioner both dispute that. The Mayor in particular accuses his opponents, his political opponents, of talking London down when they use that argument. But both are conscious that what in the past might have been regarded as low-level crime now needs tackling. It's much higher up the public agenda, which is why we're seeing this greater emphasis from the Met on crimes like phone theft.
OK, Simon, thank you. Good evening. Have you ever got into a pedicab? Or perhaps the bigger question is, have you ever felt you've been ripped off by one? Well, if you have, here's some good news. Under new rules from Transport for London, rip-off fares and blasting music is to be banned, and vehicles will be regulated in London for the first time. So that means drivers and operators will need a licence and hold at least a driving theory test certificate. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is in the West End for us tonight. And Simon, these changes have been a long time coming, haven't they?
Yes, Yasmin, you might think it hard to imagine why anyone would want to go for a ride in a rickshaw on a cold, wet night like tonight. But as darkness falls in the West End, even in winter, London's pedicab drivers begin touting for trade. They've been a fixture here for more than a quarter of a century. But in all that time, the authorities have had no powers to enforce safety regulations or control the prices they charge. Now, that's about to change. They're a riot of neon and noise, but now London's pedicabs are to be silenced. A raft of new curbs on battery and pedal-powered rickshaws will see loudspeakers banned.
We heard loud and clear, if you pardon the pun, from the public that music is not desired, so that will blaring out loud music of pedicabs will be banned as part of these regulations.
Are you being killjoys?
Not at all. London has always been, the very centre of London has always been a place for communities to live side by side with some of our international world tourism destinations, and making sure that we don't have that external noise means that we can still have people enjoying their homes in the communities in the centre of London alongside a thriving tourist economy too.
The first rickshaws arrived in London more than 25 years ago. Cabbies hated them, the authorities had no control over them, and stories began to emerge of rip-off fares.
In terms of nuisance, we've got blocked pavements and we've got loud noise being blared on people's streets. And then finally, rip-off fares. We've all heard the reports of £400 being charged for a 10-minute journey.
From October, fares will be set by TfL. Passengers will be charged a basic fee of £5, with an additional £1 added for each minute of the journey. Every additional passenger will be charged £3 each, so a 10-minute ride for 3 people should cost a total of £21.
A 10-minute journey for 6 people in a cab that costs £75,000 is £13. So how can it cost almost twice as much to get in a rickshaw as it's going to get in the safest form of transport on the streets? Doesn't make sense to me.
To get a licence, drivers will have to pass an English proficiency test and undergo criminal record checks. But TfL is also struggling with a backlog of licence applications from minicab drivers.
Probably the biggest bit of casework I get is from private hire vehicles who just can't get their licence renewed and they're losing their livelihood because of it. Now TfL is being given more licensing powers and they're not telling us how they're going to cope with it.
Tonight, a body representing pedicab drivers called for the new regulations to be postponed until next year to ensure they can make the most of the lucrative Christmas market, even if their licences haven't been issued. Simon Harris, ITV News, the West End.
In other news now, the mother of a young man who died after falling from a flat in central London has told ITV News that someone needs to be held accountable. Joshua Robbins fell from the 5th storey of the building in Holborn 3 weeks ago after the balcony railings gave way. The 23-year-old who grew up in Northern Ireland has been described as a complete gentleman who loved being a big brother. Speaking to our correspondent Simon Harris, his devastated mother claimed others in London could be at risk, and she is determined it must not happen again.
Someone needs to be held accountable for the fact that my son is dead and he shouldn't be.
For 3 weeks, Fiona Garrett has been overwhelmed by grief and anger. At the end of January, Josh, her 23-year-old son, went onto the 5th floor balcony outside his flat in Holborn to attract the attention of a pizza delivery driver.
So he'd gone out and just put his elbow onto the railing to say, "It's up here," and the railing gave way and Josh plunged 5 floors, ultimately to his death at the bottom.
Josh grew up in Northern Ireland but moved to London to live with his dad Will when he was 18. In Belfast, his mum spoke to ITV News.
Josh was a real character. Everyone that met Josh knew they'd met Josh. He was a complete gentleman. You know, he had little quirky ways and he'd be very polite to the point where it was almost, it would embarrass other people.
Josh died when the steel railing on his balcony gave way. When we visited Holland and Thurston dwellings a few days later, all of the balconies had been boarded up, including the top floor where there was no longer a barrier. Some residents told us of their concerns about what appeared to be obvious corrosion.
I'm not some structural engineering expert, but when you look at the makeup of the building from just a layperson's point of view, with the heavy flower pots, the railings different ways on each level, some are in, some are out, they're all corroded. It's just, how did that escape someone's view to thinking, you know, that that's okay? And this was just not an accident waiting to happen. So, you know, there's a lot of anger. His dad is completely traumatised.
His dad was there?
Yes, so his dad was there in the direct aftermath. No parent should have to see their child like that. He is still living at the flat at the moment, so technically he's like living at the crime scene, which must be horrific as well. My trauma is not in any league the same as his. It's a very different trauma. It's a mother's love that has nowhere to go now. You know, that's how it feels.
The block is owned by Islington and Shoreditch Housing Association. Its chief executive, Pippa Fleetwood-Reid, said today, "The death of Joshua is extremely sad and distressing. We offer our heartfelt condolences to his parents, his family and his friends at this very difficult time." But the association's response to the tragedy angers Fiona.
They're just worrying about how they look. And that to me just, it makes me so angry.
Who do you blame?
That's what's difficult at the moment, because if my son, God forbid, had been murdered, you would have someone to actually say, he's accountable, she's accountable. Whereas this is a faceless entity.
Tonight, Scotland Yard said its investigation into Josh's death would include interviews with residents and it would call in a forensic structural engineer as an expert witness. Fiona says she owes it to her son to get answers. Simon Harris, ITV News, Belfast.
And Simon's in Belfast for us this evening. Simon, Joshua's family has been dealing with such a loss in the last few weeks, haven't they?
Yes, and the emotional roller coaster just doesn't stop for them. This week has seen the opening of the coroner's inquest into Josh's death and the decision to release his body for cremation. So as traumatic a few days this week as any in the past 3 weeks. But throughout it all, Fiona has made it her mission not just to find out why that barrier gave way, leading to her son's death, but also to hold someone to account. At the same time, she's decided to launch a campaign to try to get changes to the law. It's called No More Falls, and she wants to force landlords, or wants the law to force landlords to carry out mandatory inspections of balconies and barriers, and to publicly disclose the records of those inspections, and those who don't comply, she thinks, should be fined. Now, this was Fiona's first television interview, and although she was extremely calm and moderate in what she said, she admits that she's not just traumatised by what happened, but very angry.
Simon in Belfast, thank you.